welcome to another episode of the G.I Joe New News Review. It is the holiday season, and I could not think of a better person to talk to during the holidays because of all the cool gifts I've been getting all year round than Brian Flynn from Super 7. Yay! Hello, Brian.
Finger guns. Pew, 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 pew. Yeah.
How you been? It's been a
Good.
while.
How are you? It feels like it's been forever, Dave. But it's really only been since July since I saw you.
That's exactly right. At Joe Fest
Yes.
2024. Uh, since we bring Joe Fest up, how was that? Was it a successful first attendance for you guys? Are you going to be coming back?
Yeah, we'll be back. Yeah, it was super fun, and it was great to just, obviously hang out and get to know a lot of the sort of diehards from around the world. Getting to meet the people that put together the comic book from the UK, the collected compendium of everything. That was super cool. Seeing all the sort of prototypes and different things that I'm apologizing in advance that I forget the name of the group that had like they had some of our prototypes, but they also had just the cool weird stuff you don't see, like the towels and stuff like that. That was all super
Joe
cool.
Declassified?
I think so. Yeah. And then, seeing a lot of people that we do know, like Joe Depot and some of those guys, Four Horsemen, Joel from Big Bad, Fresh Monkey Fiction, Dime Store novel guys and heroes, the Skeletron guys. I mean, all of it super cool by the end. Then obviously all the fans that we met for the first time and all the people that actually live and breathe and are collecting G.I. Joes on a daily basis. So yeah, no, it was a super fun event. And that it's really one of those cool, really focused conventions where everybody's there with one thing. So you kind of get you can get in deep rather than just like, oh, this table has Mars Attacks and this table has Munsters, and this table has G.I. Joe, and this table has Cabbage Patch Kids, versus like, no. We're here to talk about one thing right now.
And I have to say, it was so cool talking to you in person. I've been following you for now it's almost 2 decades since the mid 2007 8 when I've started seeing you at New York Comic Con, not New York Comic Con, New York Toy Fair, doing interviews, and I became a fan of Super 7 and what you were doing. It's been like almost 2 decades. I know you've been doing it probably 3 decades, but I became a fan 2 decades ago, and
Yeah,
it's so
well,
wonderful I get to see
that's
you in
great.
person and talk to you.
Oh, well, that's very, very nice and very generous of you. Obviously, yeah. Collecting wise, I started in '91, so we're cresting 33 years, heading into 34 years, and with the magazine and Super 7, that was 2001. So we're cresting 23, heading into 24 years there, which is kind of nutty.
It is. Time is very strange when I think about certain things that have happened to me. It's like that couldn't have been 20 years ago. That couldn't have been 30 years ago. That couldn't have been 10 years ago. Where is this time going? But I get off on a tangent sometimes. So,
Oh
but
no, completely. When people are like, "Oh, how long have you had that?" I was like, "Oh, I got that a few years ago. I've had it for a little while." And then I kind of go, "When did I buy that?" I was like, "Oh, I bought that in the '90s." Oh, never mind. Because you immediately like, "Oh, those aren't that hard to find. You can bump into them." Like you bought yours in the '90s. It's not the same thing.
right. But we are here to talk about the holiday season, and there's nothing better than getting a bunch of gifts from Super 7 during the holiday season. It has been a year of uh, fantastic presents from Santa Brian Flynn.
Santa's Super 7 team. I just get to be the one that shows up and talks about it, but all the team who's actually getting it knocked out. So shout out to all the people behind the scenes that are like, I don't want to be on TV. Please don't make me. And it's like, okay, you don't have to be.
So I'm going to go over a bunch of stuff really quick because I don't know what
Yeah,
our time frame on this
whatever you
is.
want to talk about, Dave. That's what I'm here for.
Right. So first, I want to say thank you for my Cobra Mortal and Glenda reactions from Joe Fest. They're fantastic, and thank you for signing my Cobra Mortal. That was very generous of you and very kind of you. That is really, they were really cool. I love them.
Yeah, I always feel a little weird because it's like I didn't design that character. Obviously it was designed in Argentina and everything else, but I do understand that I'm the person that's helping make it come to visit. So, but I don't want to put any claim on something that's not mine. But it's been super interesting because there's a fan group in Argentina that I talk to fairly regularly. And those guys, Charlie and Pelu and everybody, they're really great. And they were so excited about that figure as well as the ultimate version because no one's really come back and said, hey, the Argentina stuff is just as legit as the American stuff, and here's a really great version. So I was really psyched that they were psyched that their history is getting represented in modern G.I Joe. So that's really cool and special.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. Yeah. Dun 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 dun.
That this is
Hard to beat a
absolutely.
metallic silver snake eyes, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird. I I only discovered it when I became really into the community and stuff like that, and I'm like, what the hell is that? They're like, oh, that's an Argentina figure of a repaint of Snake Eyes called Cobra Mortal, and it had been in the collector comic by Fun publication. They had Cobra Mortal in it. I was like, oh, that's a cool character, and I never put the two together until later. And I was like, wait a minute, he appeared in the comics from the club, uh, and I'm like, there's so much stuff out there. I'm still learning things about this brand that I've been a collector of since 1982. I'm one of the longtime fans that started in 82 and continued on. I'm not a 63 fan, unfortunately, but I'm a 82 fan on. But
Yeah.
I'm still learning new stuff about this brand every day, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's super fun, and it's super fun to bring out unexpected things, I think, where people are like, "Oh, you're just going to give me another Destro." And it's like, "Well, yes, if we're talking about Red Jackal, I am, but I'm also going to give you the stuff that you didn't think that you wanted, and I'm hoping that you wanted as well."
And next up on my review, I was able to finally get all three of my reaction uh, Deke
Target, yeah,
characters
the girls at
in.
DIC, if you will, that was a Target exclusive for each drop. One came exclusively to Target. So you had Blue Baroness, Purple Scarlet, and that sort of modified green Lady J. But those were exclusive to Target.
Yeah, and I have to go to Target to get them. So I was very disappointed we did not get the Ultimates, but I was very glad that I was able to get all three of these for my collection. And I want to say thank you for putting those out. And I look forward to more stuff from maybe deep down the road. You never know. I keep
Yeah,
dropping stuff.
I realize everybody calls it Deke, and I'm like, when you're talking about the girls and you're saying they're Deke colorways, it just gets a little too close to like, well, we'll just stick with DIC. All right, let's just stay there.
So I'm really happy that we got all three of those at least in
And
that size.
there's some other cool stuff in DIC that we'll get to as well.
Oh, cool. Thank you. So then I want to go over the ultimate line. This this last wave of ultimates, you really uh hit a grand slam out of the park on this last wave. This Crimson Guard is probably my favorite Crimson Guard figure that has ever been made. It is so beautiful. You have two different heads in here. You have these highlights, animation blue highlights that really make this figure pop. And you did it as a reaction as well, but I did not think it was going to translate the same as an Ultimate, and it is just absolutely beautiful. It's my favorite Crimson Guard figure I think that has ever been made, and I love all the back stuff that you do with the animation and the computer stuff and everything. You guys, it's just I just love this. That's why I said this has been a year of Christmas presents.
Yeah, that Crimson Guard did turn out really, really great. And then
And
we're going to move on to
Roadblock,
Roadblock.
this
Yep.
guy was hefty. Man, was he big.
He's a
You
big
guys really
dude.
captured him.
You know, if you're going to pick up power lines, you got to be a big guy.
Yeah, that's true.
Actually, power lines
That's
don't
true.
weigh that much. Don't you know? But still, yeah. No road.
Yeah.
You know, he needs to have that proportionality to make him look like he's correctly coming out of the show.
And I know when you do these waves of ultimates, you have to balance it and stuff like that. And so you have that chunky character, but then you have CoverGirl, which is a little bit smaller, and she's by no means small, but a little bit smaller than Roadblock, obviously. And she
Yeah,
turned out
and
fantastic. And you did two heads with one hair long and one hair short, and a helmeted head.
yeah, yep. And CoverGirl is another one where I think like especially that look of CoverGirl just doesn't get used as much. So
No, you're right. And then, of course, I put Mortal over Major Blood. The perfect animated version of Major Blood. I don't think there's ever been this exact of a version of that Major Blood, but this is perfect. Exact animated version. And you guys like
the
super duper hit that right on the head when it comes to this sort of stuff animation accuracy. Perfect.
yeah, I think the funniest part about Major Blood was just simply like depending on what particular cartoon you're looking at, there is a wide variety of shapes and lengths and widths of that trapezoid on his forearm. Is it like, oh, it's
Oh yeah.
close, it's big, it's long, it's short, it's fat, it's what? It's like, all right, we got to make it the one everybody thinks it is versus the 800 versions that exist.
No, but this is perfect. It is absolutely perfect. All these, this is, I think, I love all the ultimates that you've done, but I think this is the best wave thus far, in my opinion. And I'm not a biased person. I can, love what I love.
Exactly. You can be
Um,
biased.
the next thing is this mystery figure,
Storm
the
Shadow.
the never produced Sunbow Storm Shadow version 2. And there was a bit of a controversy over this, if I remember correctly, at Joe Fest. People were asking about this, and people were, I think Super 7 employees were like, no, we've never heard of that. And then all of a sudden it comes out as a big bad toy store type exclusive.
I think it got leaked, but it hadn't been announced. So if it hasn't been announced, I can't really talk about it. So obviously, I usually will be like, I can't talk about that, or I would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Where the guys that actually work at the store or that actually were running the commerce side of the booth would be like, I have no idea what you're talking about because that's not what I do. I
I
run
see.
retail.
Gotcha. So I think this is a beautiful figure. There's just one thing that I was a little mystified at, and maybe you can answer this for me. Is you did this second head that looks like he has a hood on the first version there. That looks like he has a kind of a hood, but you didn't include it with this one. And this one, this I guess because this is a new interpretation. You made this interpretation for the Sunbow style
Mhm.
version of, and it's not the toy version technically. And I was
Yeah.
curious why that omission was there. Is it cost and because it was a promotional
No,
item
no,
maybe?
that was, as we were putting that together, for those that don't know, the fine folks at Big Bad are very big G.I. Joe fans. So we sort of presented them, this is what we would want to do for exclusive for you guys. And they were like, oh, can we tweak it, a little bit? And this is the way we would like it. And we're like, yeah, sure. it's supposed to be your exclusive. So if you want to tweak these parts this way and that way, you can do that. But Joel specifically, but the guys at Big Bad are obviously big supporters of the G.I. Joe brand and really big fans. And so we worked on it with them. And so it's not just like we're like, put that head in there. It's like, no, we work together and collaborate on these things together so that everybody's excited about it. Not here's what you get. It's like, no, let's work with you guys and put together something cool that everybody's excited about.
So that's kind of cool that you can work with your partners and they can pick and choose how they want to present this. And is that the case with all your vendors that you work with? Target, Walmart, I don't know who
Yeah,
else.
I think it goes back and forth depending on what it is and who it's for and when and the buyer. So it's back and forth. I think we all know that, just Joel is a pretty deep collector and those guys have been doing it for a while. So they may be more in the weeds on certain things than other people are, but that's not to say that the other people don't know what they're doing or aren't involved. I don't want it to make it like that. It just changed. Every relationship is different. No different than your relationship with many other collectors. It's like, like, oh, I'll pick that up for him or I'll grab that for them and I know they'll pay me back, or like, I better ask them before I buy it or something like that.
I understand. That's perfectly understandable. The Walmart exclusive Red Jackal, I think it's the Red Jackal figure was put out, and my
I
order
don't think
got
it
delayed.
hasn't shipped yet.
It hasn't shipped. It got delayed. I got a notification from Walmart that it was delayed. But I was
Yeah.
absolutely flabbergasted that you had an exclusive through Walmart, because I know we were talking about this at Joe Fest and you said you weren't sure where the relationship was going and stuff. So something had to have happened
Yeah.
after that for you to get an exclusive, and one of the coolest exclusives, Red Jackal.
Yeah, yeah. And we've been talking to them about a bunch of different stuff for a while, and it sort of came together literally right after San Diego on something that we were working on already. And then we were like, oh, why don't we pull these two things together? So we had already been making Red Jackal. As far as it being shipment and delayed, I mean, at this time of year, what you have is every single factory is trying to get everything out before CNY, and they're all operating at 150% capacity, but they've all committed to 200% capacity. So starting in December, projects, if anything gets like, oh, we're expecting the feedback from this from licensor on Tuesday, and the feedback comes on Wednesday, they're like, yeah, that can't happen by Chinese New Year. Nope, nope, nope. They got to figure out what's not going to happen. So I think it's just some little like things that we're working on, just making sure everything's right before it leaves. It's nothing major, but all of a sudden it's delayed, and I can't remember what the new date is. I still think it's leaving before CNY, but I can't remember why.
According
Anything at this point, you change anything at all, like, hey, we need to change the legal line on the package. Oh, can't happen before Chinese New Year. So you're like, all right, come on, guys.
Well, I think my notification said like next week. It just bumped it a week.
I
So I
don't
don't know
think
if
it.
that's true or not.
No, I don't think it's left 100% yet. I think it was supposed to be on a boat this week. I think it's shipping a week later than it was supposed to or something. I'll get the
Oh,
exact thing and I will let you know, Dave, but I know it has been delayed a little bit.
well, I appreciate it. So I was just grateful that your relationship with Walmart is increasing, and maybe we will be seeing more product through Walmart. I hope this went well for you, this exclusive.
Yeah, and I mean, right now at Walmart, you can find the new Godzilla Shogun Warrior blind box, and that's in 500 stores. So it's not in all Walmart stores. So it's about 1 in every 8. So if you've got one, if you're a diehard toy collector, you should at this point probably know which Walmarts are the Walmarts that get everything versus the Walmarts that get some things. So that Walmart that gets everything right now, if you're looking for the Godzilla Shogun blind box, that's on shelf right now. And then you'll see a much bigger push at Walmart with us come February.
Sounds good. The resets are always February and August. So
Yeah.
you're gonna have some dedicated pegs of stuff.
I'm not really supposed to talk about that yet. So
Oh,
just we're
well,
gonna have some more space and some more things showing up at Walmart come February.
well, I'm very happy about that. That's great. So since you mentioned shipping and CNY and all this stuff, there was an announcement by Hasbro. I think it was at PulseCon in September that they were going to have delays on the G.I Joe brand. It was not delays on Transformers. It wasn't on Marvel Legends. It wasn't on Star Wars, but it was on the G.I Joe brand. So I don't know how this is going to play out for next year. And you're heavily always been communicating to fans way in advance when there are issues, when there are shipment delays, this, that, and the other. Is there going to be any effects from for Super Seven during the strike and the pickup strike, whatever the January thing is, with you guys?
I don't know. I don't think so right now. Um, but I can't, they've got their own supply chain that I can't speak to as well. As far as I know, we're not looking at anything, other than sort of normal course of business. Like this stuff is when it's supposed to move through the factory, did all the stage gates, all the approval dates, did all the samples hit those dates? Because what invariably may happen is like we're moving along, but if we get a sample and we're like, oh, the paint is wrong, or I don't like the finish, we need to tweak it, that dominoes everything else and then moves it all down, because there is all this process of like, it's not just like that looks good, go with it. It's like that looks good, pack it up, I got to send it, we got to submit it, we got to put it through a portal, they have 2 weeks to approve, we got to get it back. There's a lot of steps that slow some of these things down. But our goal is to make sure that the product that you get in hand is exactly what you expect.
Well, that's very good. I'm glad to hear that, and I think a lot of the fans are going to be glad to hear that as well, because there's a lot of product that you guys put out that I am looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to getting my Copper Kid with his motorcycle. I'm looking
You
forward to
should get
getting
that very soon. Copper Kid and the Space Racer should be there soon.
great, and the next member of the Lunatics I'm waiting on. So I get a lot of their products, so I'm very happy there's not going to be any hopefully shipment delays at this point. Who
No,
knows?
most of the things are just sort of innocuous stuff that just bumps when it actually ships out of the factory. Because what will normally happen is if you have to make a tweak and it's going to be a 2 week delay, they've set up the lines, like the whole system of how they get it, paint it, package, assemble it. They have to break that all down and put something new in. So then you have to wait for the next term for them to set it back up. And that's where the delays come into play. And most of the time it's fairly innocuous, but it does have this sort of like, it's not like, oh, that's delayed a day, so it's a day more at the factory. It's like, oh, that's delayed, now that means it's a 3 week bump at the factory because something else takes its place. That's the annoying part. Yeah, the only one that's that has nothing to do with GI Joe. There's one where we're just not happy with how it looks, so it's going to be delayed till after New Year. But it has nothing to do with any of the lines that you're collecting, Dave. So let me not digress on that.
Let's get back to talking
Let's
about
get back
toys.
to Joe.
Yes. So now this is
Yo, Joe. All right.
Yo, Joe. This is one of the most interesting things that I've been wanting to talk to you about, is because I everybody that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of people in the community about GI Joe and toys. Now I just knocked over all my stuff. Um, the one thing that I think you guys are always like 150% is the packaging. And
Yeah.
it is absolutely incredible how you can come up with some of the stuff that you do. The two San Diego Comic Con exclusives you kept the sliding packaging, which I was like so happy that you did that, because the last wave, one wave at a time, has taken one piece of the packaging off, and the last wave didn't have the sliders, and I was like, oh, that stinks. And I know you've talked about this in the past, the reasoning behind it, because you're trying to keep the costs down, and you're trying to give more to the fans, like this, when you order
Yeah.
through Super 7, these collector packages and stuff like that. But it's sad that you can do away with this work.
It just comes back to the same thing like we've talked about before. It's like they're super cool, but what we find is that, 90% of the people pull the slip case off, and if they're an inbox collector, they display them with the slip case in the closet. And if they're a loose collector, the whole box goes in the closet. So you end up with this thing where it's like, well, there's a dollar you can save.
And you're looking at the proof like right behind me, because every one of my Ultimates does not have the slipcase on.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you just proved
it's a
yourself.
wonderful unwrap sort of first moment of purchase, sort of like presentation thing,
Yeah,
and it's beautiful. But
yeah,
in the end, if it's like as plastic, just like inflation goes up X amount of percentage every year, plastic cost goes up every year. Nobody wants the retail price to go up. So if plastic cost goes up 5% this year, 5% the year after that, 5% by the time we're in year 3, it's gone up not 15% because it compounds, it's more like 16.5%. Well, either the retail's got to move up or the cost has to come down. And so as we were looking at that, the easiest place was unfortunately the slip case. So usually where we can afford to keep the slip cases back in is more those convention exclusives where we're selling most of them directly to the customer rather than to wholesale. And so then we bring them back.
and I understand that. It's sad, and a lot of the folks that, like I said, I'm in communication with, they're sad about it too, because they think that is one of the best things that you guys do is your packaging, which is strange to say that, because you're trying to put out toys, not packaging. But
But it's all part of the experience. It's
it is.
it's it's the first touch point you have with a figure. When you get it, the first thing you do is hold the packaging in your hand before you ever hold the figure. And so if that packaging doesn't live up to the promise of the figure, that, and so
Right.
we try to make sure that the packaging not only lives up, but just sort of exceeds your expectations, so that every time you touch my product from beginning to end, you're like, wow, wow, wow.
And it has. And this last Ultimate Wave was so fantastic, it almost made me not think about the packaging at first. And I'm like, wow, they did an awesome job. And I was like, wait a minute. Oh, they don't have slip cases. Fudge. But it was still a fantastic wave. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
So I want to address the way that Ultimates is going to be going forward, because the DIC wave didn't come to fruition, Ultimates,
No.
but you have put out such an array of uh, great characters and cool design characters throughout the year. We got the Zartan's first appearance. We've got the Storm Shadow, Never Before DIC version 2. We got Cobra Mortal. We got Red Laser this year. Are you going to continue to be doing Ultimates maybe in that form over the next year, instead of like a wave like this third wave?
I mean, what I'd love to be doing is more waves. I think the reality is, I don't think it would be news to anyone here, is that, especially in the last year and a half, you know, is that it seems like basically people can't afford two lines that are roughly 7 inches tall. And, you know, we are a small line compared to the size of the classified line. And I really feel like classified has been so successful and people love it so much that it's really hard to keep up with classified and buy into what we're doing. So we've just seen the interest in that line. I don't want to say the interest because I get a lot of interest, but the actual amount of people that are buying it is just kind of going down. So we have to be more strategic about it. We have so many figures that we were getting ready to do, and there's a lot of figures that are sculpted, quite frankly. It's just whether or not it makes sense to tool them and sell them, and if there's enough people that want to buy them. And so we're trying to be a little more picky and choosy. And if we see that there starts to be a little bit more energy around people really getting excited about what we're doing in Ultimates for G.I. Joe, then we can really start justifying jumping into, more figures on a more regular basis. But I think it's going to be more ad hoc right now.
So I'm like one of the rare people that can
It's
probably
not, it's,
buy a lot.
if there's a lot of people that buy it, but it's not quite enough to keep it going. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does.
If
You need
I want
certain
to use
units.
numbers that have no basis in reality. So, like, if it was one of those things where we had to make 1 million of every figure, it's like we have 850 or 900,000 people that really like that line, but it's like, but we really need to get to 1 million, and we just, it's like it's almost there, but never quite there. Where in the beginning it really was, and it is tailored off. And I think I don't think it's for lack of people liking them, because when I talk to people, people love that line, but they're like, look, your figures are more expensive than classified. I can walk to Walmart and buy classified, or walk to Target and buy classified. I can pick it up off the shelf, which is a lot of the fun, going in and being like, it's here, and pulling it off the shelf. That's a great part of the fun of it. And having to like pre-order and wait for it to arrive, it's a lot. And so I think that there's just a point, there's only so much money you have to spend. And people for right now, at least for the most part, are like, I had to pick a line, and I'm in classified, which I can't fault anyone for. It's a great line of toys. So, we'll still do Ultimates sort of here and there, and hopefully the sort of interest will pick back up a little bit stronger so that we can get deeper and deeper. But there's definitely stuff on the calendar. It's just not going to be like, hey, every 3 months, every 4 months, we've got a pile of figures.
Well, that's disheartening because I was looking forward to getting my favorite 2 characters done as Ultimates at some point.
You you never know. I didn't say that it wasn't going to happen. I just said it's just not, as regular.
Well, I'm going to be anticipating that and keeping my elation at bay until these show up as Ultimates. And we were talking about packaging earlier, and I specifically asked you this at Joe Fest, and you said it was a bit of a cost to reimagine this packaging for Reaction Plus, and now that I have it in hand, it feels and looks exactly like I had as a child, other than they're in their suits. And I'm going to do something weird here. I have my mouse pad, and it's the Crimson State package.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same way that it was supposed to be. And you guys, you're another grand slam, another wonderful Christmas gift from Super 7 to me, and hopefully a lot of other people.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing. It was like that's part of what made that 2-pack so special, was that mirror packaging. So if we're going to do the twins in suits, you got to put them in the mirror packaging, don't you?
And that was another exclusive through Big Bad Toy Store. So
It
I
was
am.
actually first to market through Big Bad, so they had a 30-day
Oh,
first to market on it.
so I got 3 of them because I had to get 3 of my favorites. Um, uh, so they were okay. So that's a different
That's why you can get
model. Are
them.
you going
You
to
can
be
get
doing
them at
that
Super
sort of?
7 and other places now.
you're going to be doing that as a model now, going forward, like as a
No, I mean there's just certain products like, you know, it was the same thing, like they Joel's a big supporter and Big Bad, a big supporter of G.I. Joe, and he just was like, you know, is there something special we can do? And since the twins weren't going on shelf because they don't peg the same as the regular figures, we're like, well, instead of that, like, why don't you get these as sort of a first, and you can have a certain amount of time with them before they go wide everywhere. So he got his thing with the twins, and then Target has the figures on shelf.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Are we going to be seeing more scenarios like this going forward with Reaction Plus?
Um, I don't know specifically. It was just, you know, the twins weren't part, if you will. There's the regular carded figures, and while the twins are all part of the same thing, if you think about it from a merchant standpoint, it needs to be the same size, same card back, same price point, or I can't put it on that peg. So
Right.
those can't go there. So it's honestly like its own weird special thing already in terms of merchandising and how things go to market. So being that it was always in this kind of odd spot, we were like, oh, since Big Bad's really excited about it, why don't we work with them on the twins then? And we'll make a program with them where we start the twins there and then bring it out to everybody else. And so as they really get behind that line, they've got something special there as well. Does that
Will
make
that
sense?
continue? Yeah, it makes sense, but will it continue
Uh,
forward?
we're working on something for them that will be an exclusive to them next year. So there'll be something different that's exclusive to them.
So it'll be the same, not a
Yeah,
two
it's
pack
like,
or
you know,
anything,
every
but
once in a
exclusive.
while, yeah, it'll be every once in a while they get something for the, you know, but, you know, that gets into what are they buying? How big is the order? All those kind of, you know, it gets into a lot of sort of back and forth. But we're working with them right now on something that would be exclusive for them next year. So I think the rest of the line that they'll get is the standard line. You'll be able to buy all of it from them, but there will also be an exclusive that you can get from them.
Great, because the whole idea of Reaction Plus has been the number one, I would say, number one topic of fans conversations in the GI Joe community for the last couple of years. The possibility that the O-ring line or style a figure would go to Super 7, and that you would continue doing some of the stuff that never ever was made before as an O-ring style form of figure. And the four that you did initially, I got to preview it at Joe Fest
Yep.
without all the paint and everything like that. I got to see the card back, and I picked
You got to
everyone
see.
all those versions.
You got to see. Nope, that's not that. These, the blue ones.
Yes.
I have one set, and it's mine. That's it. This is the set from Joe Fest. It's like nobody. This is me. Here we go.
And I remember you said that that had just arrived in the box. You showed me the box that you had
Yeah.
that they came in. You said, we just got this, and you're going to be like, and then when I saw it, I was like, wow, okay. You guys really, it seems like I'm being a, I don't know, fanboy about this, but I love this brand. I love all the stuff that Super 7 does, and it's not just GI Joe. So I'm not going to apologize because I don't need to, but I'm very, very happy at what you've done with this Reaction Plus line. I think they look exactly like they should look like. A friend of mine, the Island Viper, uh, deconstructed them and took them all apart and looked at the O-ring, looked at the rivets. And the one thing that I was curious about, because we've discussed it in the past, was the shoulder rivets, whether they should be painted or not. And I talked to a friend of mine, Carson Metaxas, about this a little while back. And I was looking over on my shelf with all my O-rings up there. I said, did they have the rivets painted or did they not have the rivets painted? And he said he believed the later years had it painted, the early years didn't. And I looked up and I was like, you're right. The early years,
Yep.
the original 13 have the rivets showing. And I, for some reason, didn't compute. And you and I talked about that. So the updated parts, I'm glad that you were able to update that stuff. The hand parts, the O-ring part, those things needed to be updated for the quality. But I'm curious about the iron in the plastics, because in England, the iron in the plastic didn't cause the figures to yellow, but in the United States, the iron in the plastic did. So are these all things that you're thinking about?
When you say the iron in the plastic, what do you mean? You're saying that like the T-bar was somehow making it
No,
yellow?
it's the like. Let me use Storm Shadow as an example. If you take
Yeah.
an American release Storm Shadow, it yellows over a period of time. But if you
Yeah.
get one from Palatoy or from Europe, the way that they did it didn't yellow. So it's better
That
to
would
get
just
one of
be,
theirs.
I don't know that it's iron. Iron's probably an easy thing for people to say because of, when it turns things more red and yellow and all that other stuff. It's just, it's just that plastic sort of changing with and decomposing isn't the right word, but changing through its natural state. So whatever they used wasn't 100% inert or was reactive to outside conditions. So over time, it's like bubbles can yellow or sometimes they don't yellow
Right.
depending on the conditions they're in. Or in some cases, they can be locked away in a closet and still yellow. And that's just the nature of the plastic. And I can do this with a really weird tangent, if you will. My brother-in-law works in concrete and cement, like what they do for roads and bridges and everything. And it's literally like, oh, if it's between this temperature and this temperature outside when you pour it, it changes how it cures and how long and how hot the concrete gets on the inside and can create problems that don't show up for 20 years down the line. And there's like all these formulas about how much water and how much aggregate and how much fly ash you have to put in that changes, but you won't know about it. So if some dude's just throwing in concrete and it's raining outside, well, 20 years from now, that's a problem, but it's not a problem now. So when you're talking about all these plastics that they made 40 years ago, it's like, it can literally be like, I'm making it up. It's 80% PVC, 15% ABS is the mix. Well, if that was 15.1 versus 40, or 84.9, well, that actually might change 40 years down the line, that batch at that time, or whatever whitening, material they were using. White is always notorious because
Right.
anything shows where nothing
Yep.
shows on black. Your black snake eyes might be yellowing just the same, but you can't tell because it's
Can't
covered in
tell.
pigment.
Right.
So I don't think it's necessarily iron, but it's just a lot of these things that we think of are not inherently inert. That's why when you get a new toy, a lot of times, and you can sniff it, when you open the package and you smell it, that's not that off gassing is the chemical properties breaking down from uninert to inert. Even though when they put it in there, it's solid, it still not necessarily means it's 100% cured. And sometimes those plastics, if you smell them, you can still smell them a couple years. Like they're still transitioning. They're still becoming inert. So it's a thing that happens over time. And we're on a tangent there, and I apologize.
No,
But
but this is what I wanted to know, though. Is that something that you're looking at for this? Because it does happen with that line. I
yeah,
don't know.
I think obviously when we're going into this, we're being very critical about the ABS PVC mixes that we're making. So like same thing, the fingers don't break, especially those
Right.
thumbs and everything,
Yeah.
but you can't have like these loosey goosey rubbery hands. and all this other stuff, because then they tie into the forearms and blah, blah, blah. But as far as we know, it's all going to be rad. But 20 years from now, we'll have to double check. But if we talk about all the toys that we've all bought and are going back to the 80s, in 99.9% of the cases, they're all still great. So I don't anticipate having any issues, but there may be something where, like, oh, 20 years later, like, this becomes a slight issue. But I would say that we've been making reaction figures for almost 20 years now, and the 20-year-old ones are fine. So I don't think it's really a thing, but you never quite know. But yeah, we spent a lot of time on the hands trying to get a right level of flexibility that had a right level of rigidity to go into the Kung Fu swivel.
Right.
So if we're going to do this, that piece has to have a certain amount of rigidity to hold that joint. And if it's too rigid, then this is going to break. But if it's too soft, then it's just going to twist. It's not going to spin and turn. And like going back and forth, we did a whole bunch of tests on different blends and levels of ABS PVC mixes to get that.
And that kind of goes into the O-ring as well, because I know that a lot of people are using silicone O-rings, and I don't recall if you guys use the silicone O-ring
We're
because
using
of the
silicone as
heat.
well.
Oh, you did? Okay. So that actually goes to my previous comment about the paint, is because the O-rings were breaking after a certain amount of years. They
Right.
stretched and broke. But the silicone, because it's made the way it is heat resistant, or it's not heat resistant, but it's heat absorbent where it doesn't break. It's
Yeah, it doesn't, the old ones that break, once again, that is the material itself breaking down and trying to go from one element that's this into two elements. And so that's why I'm saying it's not really completely inert, and you get, like old rubber cracking and stuff like
right.
that and different things like, so we all believe that the silicone, from everything that we can tell, is going to last longer and hold its shape, because more importantly than simply just not falling apart is retaining the tension, because the looser it gets, the more you get an O-ring that does this,
Yeah.
and so
I
you want
remember
to keep
that
that
when I was young.
tension. Huh?
I remember that when I was young with my G.I. Joes, and it was only maybe 2 or 3 years, and it would do that. And I was like, is that supposed to do that? Probably it wasn't supposed to do that, but they didn't know at the time.
Well, I think probably too, it depends on your play pattern with them and how much you're stretching those O-rings, because those old O-rings, and quite honestly, are not that indifferent to sort of a ponytail holder, you know, and so those things get stretched out and break, as the father of 3 daughters, I know all too well.
Oh man, I feel bad for you.
No, they're awesome. They're awesome. So good. So good. Yeah.
I had 2 sisters, older sisters, and man, oh boy, I'm not even going to go there. But
well, if they were, well, I'm sure they had fun. Well, we'll put it that way.
Oh yeah, at our expense.
But yeah, so going back to your question about the rivets, though, we have same thing. Early ones, not painted, later ones painted, and then you get some anomalies in the middle, like Snake Eyes has black rivets instead of silver rivets, and some of that. But it was like, to me, visually, if I'm trying to take you back to you being 10 years old again, they have to be silver, because if you see a silver rivet, it's old G.I. Joe. Nothing else looks like old G.I. Joe with those silver rivets. So that's why it was unpainted rivets.
And you can tell right on the shelf that it's the silver rivets. So it's exactly like the ones I'm looking at from my display over there. You can see the silver rivets from about 5 feet away. And
Yeah,
so you,
you know, and while technically, yes, they painted them later. If I say, think of a GI Joe in your head, what are the, if you will, like the signatures of it? Silver Rivet is one of those.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that is specifically why we were like, nope, has to be silver. Actually, it wasn't any conversation. Like first conversation we had, I was like, silver rivets. I have silver rivets. Not even going down the road. We talked about it, but nope, no painted rivets. Silver rivets. Got to have silver rivets.
So that's one of the interesting things is the fact that you've all these different things we've just discussed, getting into how the sauce is made and stuff like that. You've had to have been thinking about this stuff for years because I know you wanted to do O-ring first. You did not want to do reaction 5 POA.
I
I
mean
know you wanted
that's what we originally pitched, and you know, Hasbro was a bit like, we're in that world, like you guys do what you do that's different than us, and that's what reaction was. So we went into reaction, and after proving that we could take care of the brand through reaction, through Ultimates, they gave us the chance to take on O-ring, which was no small feat. And I want to say thank you, not that I haven't before, but also with that, for Hasbro for entrusting that to us. Like that's not a small thing. That is one of their tentpole babies. That's one of the things that built that company. And letting us make O-ring for them is pretty great. And I'm super excited about it.
well,
There you go, cover
judging
girl.
by the reaction thus far and the quality and all the things that we've just discussed, the thought processes and the things that you brought into these, we were all pretty psyched when we saw the mothership last year with the 5-pack offering of the Vipers pilots and stuff, and then the O-ring Viper single, and we're like, wait a minute, if they're doing this for this, and they're going to this length.
At that time, we hadn't gotten on board. They had not, but we convinced them to allow us to do that so that the mothership could work for collectors of both reaction and classic O-ring.
And
And
it worked. That was a gamble,
that was the door opening.
and it exactly was the right way to do it. You kind of gave them the biscuit without giving them the whole meal or whatever it was. I don't know what the right analogy for it is, but you know what I'm talking about. You
It was
gave them the carrot. Here's the carrot. Do you want this carrot? Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the rabbit too.
yeah, something like that. I'll go with that. Yeah,
So from that point, we were like, okay, we know they're going to be able to do this right because everybody was combing over those figures and that project with a fine tooth comb, examining it and stuff. We're like, okay, they know how to do this, so they've got to get it. They have to get it. Hasbro, give it to them, and you were able to get it, and you put out the first wave. I've yet to get my Bat figure. I had to order it through Big Bad Toy Store because you guys sold out on your website. So I only have the 3 of my beautiful Crimson
I
Twins.
think right now, Cobra, I think 3 of the 4 are sold out in general right now. We're gonna make more so people don't panic and pay crazy secondary market prices. Like we're gonna make some more runs of them to get them back in. Bat was the first one to sell out, and because he's also an army builder, you'll get those. But at the same time, don't, just because we're sold out, maybe Big Bad sold out, that doesn't mean Target is sold out. Like I know the local Target to me in San Rafael still has all 4 on peg. So
That's a tricky thing because I've gone to 5 Targets in my area. I've yet to see one O-ring Reaction Plus figure.
interesting.
And I'm
Well,
in Central Florida.
I'm sorry you're not being able to find them, Dave. But they, you know, technically speaking, they're on. You know, they get replaced. I've gone over this someplace and I don't remember. But the next wave doesn't come out till next year because, like, it was doing well and selling well, and they wanted it on shelf for longer. So they've got inventory. It just may not be at your store. So I don't know how to help you on there. But like I said,
Well,
I know that there's some O-rings at the local one to me right now.
I've never had a problem finding the reaction plus the reaction figures. I show you all three of the DIC ones, so I can find those there, but I haven't found the reaction plus as of yet. Uh, I've I think I bought one from Walmart.com. I bought one from Target.com, one from Big Bad, one from you guys, and one from Big Bad Toy Store. So I bought it from 4 retailers just so I could get them all, and I
Well,
still
then
don't have all of them.
I appreciate it. The Walmart.com one was probably a third party seller on Walmart because Walmart
Yeah,
didn't carry it themselves.
yeah, it was a third party, but
Yeah.
I've found some of my reactions that way. The ones that have sold out on your website, I've found them on third party on Walmart several times. Uh,
Yeah.
because
And you can
I'm a
also check
completed.
Amazon.
Well, Amazon's a little bit pricier, but yeah,
Yeah. I'm just
wherever.
saying, for anybody out there who says, "Oh, I'd like to get a bat," check those people. Just because we're sold out and Big Bad sold out doesn't mean that everybody that got them is sold out. But we
You
will
know,
also
I
be making more.
I looked for the bat on Amazon. They did not have it. I think the only two they have on there are Cobra Commander and Cover Girl. They don't have Snake Eyes either.
They may just be sold out.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. So you've done such a great job with this first installment, first wave, first presentation for O-Ring Plus, and there's so many. I'm not gonna uh, try to get you give me any exclusives and stuff like that because
I
I know
think
how
the
that goes.
internet knows what the next wave is already. So
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure everybody knows what's coming in the next wave. Uh, Hopefully they'll
Right.
be excited about it. It's characters you haven't got before in a lot of ways. A couple of those for sure that people have always said, "Oh, would you ever make that?" It's like, well, we're making it.
I think that's fantastic. And that's the whole conversation is okay, let's just use comic books. Okay, we got the Snake Eyes comic book version, we got the Bat comic book version, but there's so many comic. And one of my all-time favorite characters from the comic is Candy Appel as Bungo the Balloon Bear. Now, I know that is not everybody's favorite character,
Yeah.
but she's an integral part of the comic. She has a huge role in the comic. She's connected to a major character, Ripcord. She has a father that's connected to my favorite faction, the Crimson Guards. She's an integral part of the comic. And so it's one of those things that these type of characters that the comic book fans that love the comics, and I'm not alone. I'm like nearly 3 million people supported the omnibus hardcovers through Skybound of
Yep.
Larry Hama's material. So
Yep.
there's a lot of people that love this material. And so that's just an example. I'm not saying that you're making her or you
You
should
know,
make her. I'm just saying
in
there's
reaction with the first wave of reaction, we made my favorite comic book guy, which is Quinn.
yeah.
You know, so
But he
I,
was
I
done as an O-ring though. He was done in the comic 2 packs
he was
in the
done much
early 2000s.
later. He was done much later. Yeah, there's no reason to make Quinn right now, at least in my mind, in O-ring.
Right. And so that's the conversation that everybody's having is, oh my God, are we going to get the clown? Are we going to get Bungo the Balloon Bear? Are we going to get a real soft master and hard master, not the ones that the 2 packs did that really weren't the accurate hard master and soft master? Are we going to get the blind master? Are we going to get Granny Arashikage? Are we going to get, Dr. Venom? Are we going to get Scarface or whatever the heck his name was? That's the comic book characters that people want to see. A real Billy, I don't know if would do a Billy with the revolver, the Clint Eastwood revolver, or not on that cover where he wants to shoot his father. But That's the stuff that I'm looking for. I know there are another faction that wants to see the Sunbow animated, and then we have obviously the DIC of a lot of stuff that happened in that never has been done. You just touched on 3 figures that have never been made before, and
Right.
Ultimates didn't go through, but there's so many opportunities for O-ring, and I'm just
There are a ton. There are a ton. We've got a lot scripted. I think there's a lot of things that people are not expecting. Like I said, before the line list of Wave 2 got out there, I don't think anything that's on Wave 2's list was on anybody's guest list. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm willing to guess that a couple of those people they're going to make that. I wouldn't have guessed that this early.
Well, one of them everybody's wanted for 40 years. It's one of the most underrated characters from the Sunbow animated series that people have wanted. I'm not going to say who it is. And it's like,
Well, if it's a
why did
he
they do
versus an it, I know what you're talking about.
that? But that touches on something else that I think we had this. I'm trying to recall our conversation for Joe Fest because we talked several different times, and I thought you said that you were not going to make O-rings of things that have already been made. And I know, like, let's use CoverGirl as an example, and I'm sure you have a logical reason for this. You did the reaction CoverGirl, basically this version. She's a little bit different, but then you did the reaction plus as well. So I was wondering a little bit, maybe wanting a little clarification on that.
Yeah, but I think CoverGirl is one of those, for me, Blonde CoverGirl especially, is one of those where it's like, she always gets pushed to the wayside. I'm like, no, come on. Like, you don't have this one. So we did go back on her. We did make her in Reaction Plus. Most of that we won't go back and do. I felt like, I don't know, I just really felt like she was an integral part of that early Joe stuff that didn't exist in O-Ring. Like, you've got kind of a main character in a way that isn't there versus brunette CoverGirl, you know?
And that goes to the same thing with the comic book Bat, because that
Yeah.
was a version of the Bat that never was done as an O-ring, and you did the reaction, and it was like in the first wave of reaction, and it was fantastic. And you did the ultimate, so it was like a no-brainer. You were going to do an O-ring or a reaction plus of that.
Yeah, but we went straight to comic on that. We didn't, where, if you talk about the Ultimates, you've got a variation of that that's cartoon accurate, but it's still black. Like, we're not doing the black one. We're doing the blue. It's got the different arms. It's got there's definitely some different stuff about him.
And that was
because it's like you have that wonderful, wonderful black Bat that was made back in the day, and now you can put that blue comic book back next to it. So we'll never make that black one
as O-ring
because it's already been done.
Gotcha. And that was one of the things the community I've heard is they didn't back like connect this to the other Bat, like some of the parts you can put on the other Bat, but some of the parts you can't put on your Bat. So it's like people were like, why can't
You
you
mean
go
like
both
swapping
ways?
accessories?
Yes.
I can't remember why that. I know that was in the original intent, but I think that there was a manufacturing thing that we were running into with the material because of the size. Back to that sort of hand and forearm thing about how small or wide that hole needed to be. And I realized that sounds sort of silly, but we had it, and then we were having issues with it, and they were like, look, we need to change the size so it continuously works, and then it won't be backwards compatible. But we had to change it from being compatible to not being compatible to make sure that it worked as this figure and didn't get tweaky. We went back and forth because I remember us going back and forth on that and being really annoyed about it. But in the end, it was like, well, it is what it is, unfortunately.
and it kind of stands on its own now as its own thing because it has both hands that are detachable, which the original didn't have. It only had the one hand that was detachable,
Right.
and stuff like that. And some of the accessories are compatible. You can use some of the stuff, I believe, and some of them you can't, obviously, because it has the two hand thing, and they're not made to go on the two hands. The original bats isn't made to go on two different. It's only made to go on the right hand, I believe.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And the obviously the face mask is more of the comic book face mask accurate, and
Yeah.
and even the toy to the animation original bat is not the same because the animation has the red face and the toy has like I think a silver face. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
very
if you
strange.
look at like the elbows and the hands and all the gears on the arms, they're all radically different in the comic books too.
Right. They're more blocky in the comics, I believe.
Yeah, the comics have like all these, there's a big circle at the
Yeah,
elbow and a bunch of other
right.
stuff, and then these
Rivet
vertical
or
lines that come down.
yeah,
Nah,
right.
yeah.
Is are those things going forward that you're thinking about, like backward compatible stuff, whether you do a comic variation of this that's not
Well, we
in the
tried to make sure
cartoon
that
variation?
we were trying to make sure they're as compatible as possible, like the peg holes on the back and the screws and everything else. So, unfortunately, the bat we couldn't make that way, but the rest of the parts are. So,
Uh, Okay. Well, that's pretty good. I think people will be happy about that because uh, that's one of the weird things about G.I. Joe. I was never that type of G.I. Joe collector when I was a teenager, and I'm aging myself a little bit, but I was a teenager when I got into G.I. Joe. I was 11 years old, and that's a little older than the average person that got into it. But a lot of kids, they took their figures apart and they mix and matched parts, and that's how you get a lot of these kit bashes and these fans that do that as a living now because they did that back in the 80s
yeah.
and stuff like that. I never did that. I was like, well, this is the way they made it, this is the way it is. And then later in life I got to working at collectible shops and stuff like that and volunteering, and I became a master of pulling GI Joes apart and putting them back together to fix O-rings and T-bars and this and that. And I was like, I don't know why I didn't do this as a child, but I still don't think I would do it now. I would not. I'm not an open package collector, you know that. So I
Yeah.
doubt I'll ever do that with these. But you never know. Down the road, in 10 years, are they in bins? And people are like, "Well, where's the cover girl parts?" And I'm like, "Oh boy."
Well, we'll
Try to
see.
put
We'll
them.
see. We'll see how people excuse me, react to them. So far, people seem to be pretty excited, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm very happy. I think you've done a great job, and the future is very bright for Reaction Plus, as far as I can see. Uh,
Let's hope.
well, and that's the crux of it. You're the man that's making it. Your team is making it. Super Seven's making it.
We
So it
we
has
are,
to.
but it's a two-way street. It's not just what we make, it's that somebody also has to want what we make and buy it and support it so that we can make the next ones. So, you know, that's the symbiotic relationship of it.
Now, do I dare bring up a piece of our conversation from the past that I've asked about in this instance with O-Ring Reaction Plus? Now that we are making it, now that we're getting it in hands, now that we can see what you're doing, and the fact that you use the mothership as a multiple compatibility model, is there a possibility of maybe getting vehicles that way?
I think anybody that's me talk about GI Joe, same thing. What the hardest part is that unlike most other lines, except maybe Star Wars, the vehicles are so integral to GI Joe. There's more GI Joe vehicles than there is anything else. There's very little that hasn't been made. there's only a few. Like when we found them, when we did the mothership, it was because like, okay, here's one you haven't had, but like it's only one of very few that you haven't had. There's some stuff we're working on, but it's not going to be a super focus on it, just simply because I'm not going to improve what you already have. Like you've already got those ships, you've already got that stuff, so I don't need to come back and give you a slightly updated version of you know, a motorcycle or something. I don't know. Or
Well,
or I'm trying to avoid one name, so I was just like yeah,
I understand.
it doesn't really, at least like I said, we're working on another vehicle. Um uh but it's not sort of the same as like, okay, hey, there's a whole bunch of vehicles coming too. It's like, how are you going to get me to remake that? It's like it's already great, and you already
Right.
have it, and you can kind of get them all fairly affordably. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense for me to go after that stuff instead of giving you new figures.
Well, there's
But
only
I'd
one.
love to. It's not that I wouldn't like to. It's just I really don't think the support for it is there in the same way, in the way that I've said to other people before. It's like, think of how many G.I. Joe collectors you know. How many of them at some point said, I can't do the vehicles and the figures, and got rid of their vehicles? So you've already said if there's this many G.I. Joe figure collectors, there's only this many that actually collect the vehicles. And then how many people want a redo of a vehicle they already have, versus something new? And so it just, the numbers make it more difficult, and you're not going to get retail support for vehicles at the collector level because they take up too much shelf space. So it has to survive outside of retail, and that's a really tricky one.
Well, there's only one vehicle that I know of that has never been made, and we've spoken about it twice. I alluded to it earlier, and it's backwards compatible with the original line. It's compatible with Reaction. It's compatible with Reaction Plus. It's compatible with 4-inch. I'm not even going to say the name of it because I know you know the name of it by now. That will
Maybe.
you and you kind of gave me the math on it last time we talked about it, and I know that every single person that I'm aware of would buy that vehicle. It's just a no-brainer. It's something people wanted for decades, and we've never gotten it. And there's nobody
Well,
else that's going to make this. You are the
well,
only one.
we're working on one thing, and we'll see how that goes, and that may lead to another. We'll just have to kind of see.
All right.
I hate to be that guy, but I do actually have to go pick up those said daughters from school now. So this is
All right.
actually my alarm is saying it's time for you to leave to pick up your kids, because I have to have those things. Otherwise, I'm just
All right.
working.
I understand. Well, I want to say, really, I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me. You've always been very genuine and courteous and forthright with your conversation, and I really appreciate. I know the community appreciates it, and I want to wish you and all your team at Super Seven a wonderful holiday season. And I want to say thank you.
No, and thank you, Dave. Thank you for, one, being a supporter of the brand, two, for the work and effort and help that you do at Joe Fest. I'm not sure if everybody's aware of how much work that stuff really is, but yeah, it's great, and I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone that is picking up our figures, because I want to make a whole bunch more so that there can be more leaks on the websites out there telling you what's coming, and you can go, oh my God, they're making that.
That's why. So, all right, fans out there, if you want to see more groundbreaking, in-depth interviews, cutting-edge interviews like this, like, share, and click all that stuff you have to do on these videos to do that. Uh, Thank you, Brian, again, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
That's great. Looking forward to it, Dave.
You Yo,
Yo, Joe!